Sarah, welcome back to Shifting Culture. So excited to have you back on.
Thanks. It's so good to be here. I can't believe it's been a couple of years.
Yeah, it's been like 3 years. It's been a long time. And I've been really looking forward to this because I don't know, but I actually like you. And it was it
The
was fun
feelings
to
are mutual.
thanks. And so I've been been looking forward to this. I was like, hey, it's nice to have Sarah back on. I've been following your work from afar as you've been working on nervous systems and seeing what you've been doing as you've been going through your doctoral program, as you are writing. How has this shaped? I know that you worked on it through your doctoral program.
Yeah.
Why nervous systems? Why anxiety? Why is this something that you wanted to tackle?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I started writing this book in my demon program. That's Doctor of Ministry. My kids love saying mom has a demon. They think that's hilarious. It never gets old. But I I did a program at the Peterson Center for Christian Imagination at Western and got a demon in the sacred art of writing. And so I began to think about various topics in that program. I was thinking about the idea of holiness, and that really just means being set apart, but I wasn't getting any lift. I had a lot of false starts, but I really started writing in those years about being in the sandwich generation, about caregiving, about my own kind of changing body at midlife, thinking about wellness culture. So really, I would just started writing a lot about my own experience in my own body and in the body of my parents with anxiety. So that became sort of a mildly literary way to begin the exploration. But then as the
Yeah.
world continued to
Mm.
have many twists and turns, how it's been such a hard time to be alive. I began to, regardless, I began to realize how there are systemic anxieties, there are church anxieties, there
Mm.
is such a palpable anxiety in our politics more than ever, more than when nervous systems came out a few years ago. So I
Yeah.
began to kind of map this idea of this book called Nervous Systems about sort of collective and individual anxiety. And here we are.
So where did it move for you? Like maybe the first time or the beginning from the individual feeling anxiety in my body and then recognizing that we have communal anxiety, systemic anxiety
Yeah.
in our systems.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that first link was church because, I mean, again, with that first book, Joshua, so many people that I know and love and that everybody around me knows and loves are having a complicated relationship with church. If they
Yeah.
identify as a Christian, I just saw more and more brokenness and people leaving. So the first kind of thread from my own experience to collective anxiety was really through church, my own church story, and then just thinking about the intense splintering and division within American Christianity that has now become quite politicized
Yeah.
more than ever. And so I began to kind of write a little bit about my own experience going to the same church for 21 years and then also
Mm.
looking around a little bit more broadly, I guess.
Yeah. So just personally, you walk through a little bit in your introduction. At the end, you basically said when Jesus says, "Do not worry," basically you say, "Hey, my anxiety is still there,
Yeah.
but God is with me
Yeah.
and is present, and I'm able
Hmm.
to be present." Where you're holding your anxiety today in your
Yeah.
body.
Yeah, spoiler alert, the end of the big reveal is in the first chapter. Oh gosh. Yeah, I think that verse my whole life has kind of plagued me, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
The idea of not where I have heard many sermons. I understand there is nuanced context in the original language around what Jesus may mean by do not worry. I understand some of those things without being a scholar. But the truth is the sort of simplicity, and if you imagine Jesus saying those words and the complexity of being a person in an anxious body, like that tension became this central pain point, and it really has been since I was a kid. I mean, my dad was anxious. I was worried over. I'm sure my mom was pregnant. I'm sure I was worried over as a baby. I mean, some of us just come from families where anxiety is just very, very present. And just genetically, I was thought a little bit about epigenetics and my dad's side and my
Mm.
Jewishness. And, you know, so I think it's always been there. And something pretty profound happened, which really is where the book leads, is I had this experience of, like a lot of people, understanding contemplative practices. And then
Hmm.
also, I did this 9-month Ignatian retreat, the Ignatian spiritual exercises, which ended up being, in a way that still surprises me, a kind of huge, huge moment where I began to
Yeah.
understand my anxiety a little bit differently. Something really did shift. And so the way that it is now, I mean, I'll answer that in two ways. Like, one, I'm bringing a book into the world, and that is immensely freaky because talk about, I mean, anxiety is typically rooted in wanting to have control and not having it. And so you work for like 3 years in the basement on something and then wonder how it may or may not be received. That's a very tender place. So I think I
Hmm.
probably have like project anxiety right now. But in a broader sense, I do feel like I think about it a little bit differently. And that's really because of this idea of Ignatian indifference or holy
Mm.
indifference, which I talk
Yeah.
about in the book. This idea of whatever the binary might be, a long life or a short one, Ignatius says, fame or disgrace, health or sickness,
Mm.
whatever is on the left hand or the right hand. Is there a
Mm.
way to only have the ability to choose the things that glorify God, to want those things, to receive them, whatever they may be? And so that
Mm.
concept that I write about, I think about every day, multiple times a day. I think about that all the time. So today, my anxiety feels different in that light, a little bit lessened, or I have like a broader perspective, like a bigger
Mm.
story around it, I guess.
That's good. So, like in this conversation right now, you have probably things that are on your mind of caregiving, you figuring out what's going on with your family. You got a book release coming out, like so you're in the middle of that. What's going on? So it's work, and there seems to be probably around you all things that you can worry about that are out of your control that you can't control in this conversation at the moment. So for people wondering, how do you be present in something like this, in this
Yeah.
conversation, and not worry about what you can't control at the moment, but be here with me, with the audience, and
Yeah.
actually, yeah, be present in it?
Gosh, I love that question. I was thinking about that this morning a little bit. So in the so the book is called Spiritual Practices to Calm Anxiety in the Body, Church, and Politics. One of the first things, and I'm answering this first one about the body since that's very much what we're talking
Yeah.
about in our mind, is really this idea of understanding embodiment differently. I mean, I think that as a woman that is on Instagram and like understands wellness culture and thinks a lot about those dynamics, like the idea I have in my mind or have had for many years of the embodied person is maybe
Hmm.
somebody doing a forest bath. Maybe they're wearing like a linen like tunic. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
maybe they're like barefoot. But the way that I am, my own disposition, the way many of us are practically trying to like put dinner on the table and shower and dress and function and live life when things are busy or crazy, that feels
Hmm.
very impractical. So the idea of embodiment and practicing that versus the reality of my life began to make me think, what is this really about? How can I understand
Yeah.
it differently? And so I began to do different things. I began to walk. There's a long loop around the place where I live. It's like a 45-minute loop. I just like two things. One, I began to move my body in a way that was not because I was trying to exercise or I was just trying to like move and get out of my head. So this
Mm.
morning I moved my body before we talked. I stretched, which I know sounds very like middle-aged lady, but seriously, like I just stretched out for 10 minutes and it was awesome. And then I listened to music. Like I think that in the mornings specifically, I mean, we're talking at 10:30.
Yeah.
I used to think, I'm going to pray, I'm going to get it done, I'm going to check the box, I'm going to have
Mm.
quiet time. It's just so much less anxious now. I listen to music, I put on like rain background, I just notice things. I just might sit and try to sense God's love or a sense of God's presence. I just let it be really open and take the fear out of it. There's no sense of driving accomplishment. I just try to really be in touch with myself and just look around a little bit more.
Mm.
So that answer is not
That's good.
necessarily specific, but it's actually very much changed how I think about what that means to
Yeah.
be practically embodied in a very kind of busy season, I suppose.
Mm. When I think about anxiety, I think about weird worry, but I also like meld it together with fear. Is fear and anxiety, are they cousins? How do they work together? And what is maybe the difference between fear and anxiety? And
Yeah.
like, what is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think maybe it's a bit of a chicken and an egg thing, Joshua. I don't really know, but I think that they both trigger similar reactions in our nervous systems and in our
Hmm.
body. There's this kind of need to kind of clench down or to be defensive or to have our feathers ruffled because we're really sensing this kind of primal idea of danger, right? I mean,
Yeah.
an anxiety response. Anxiety is not something. It's something we all have. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a fight or flight thing. It's like a
Yeah.
cave person thing where we want to make sure that we're protected and safe. So that impulse is something that I think is healthy and protective. But I think that fear is a feeling against something we might specifically understand or be able to identify. Whereas anxiety can be this general sense of dread. It can be very existential, at least it is for me. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes we can worry about our job security or a test, something that's practical. But for a lot of us, I think it can be a little bit more fuzzy and harder to kind of
Mm.
pin down, kind of
Yeah.
like trying to pin down a cloud, like my friend Cameron says. So I think that's kind of a little bit of the difference or how I think about it.
Mm. Yeah, I think dread is a helpful
Yeah,
word. And it's not a
totally.
it's like it feels like there's a lot of dread, right? There's a dread
Yeah,
here in our families. There's a dread in the church. There's dread in politics. There's dread in our country,
yeah,
and this dread we have to figure out a way to live in it where
yeah,
it doesn't control us and move us. And for
yeah,
you, what you said that was really helpful, right, is getting to holy indifference. So that means that these spiritual exercises were really helpful for you.
yeah,
What made you move towards the spiritual exercises to say
yeah.
that I want to engage this? I want to do this. What was it about the Ignatius
Yeah,
spirituality or spiritual exercise?
totally. Yeah, I mean, so Grace in about 2015, the church I've gone to forever, along with a lot of churches
Hmm.
in that time, became really interested in contemplative practices. We'd always been pretty liturgical. Back then we were Presbyterians, now we're Anglicans. But that's a whole other story. But but we'd been, interested in contemplative things. But we had this woman named Debbie Tacky Smith who
Mm.
joined our congregation in around
I want to.
2014.
I want to. I for some reason. So I'll cut through this. I want you to continue. But
Oh, sure.
I was on the way when I moved back from Korea to Seattle. There was a job open at Grace that people wanted me to apply
No.
for,
Wait, you're
and so
kidding.
I was almost to a place of wanting to try and
That's
apply at
crazy. I had
Grace
no
and go
idea.
there.
That's
And then I
crazy.
ended up going to Kansas City about 4 or 5 months later. But anyways, so
It's almost like we were destined to be friends. Look at that.
I
That's
know, I
wild.
know.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that in the middle of it. So
Did I wonder if it
continue.
was that same era. So
Yeah.
around 2014, a woman named Debbie Tacky Smith came to our congregation as our spiritual formation director. I had never heard of things like Lectio Divina or listening prayer in the same. She just really introduce things in a way that felt warm and safe. And, like a lot of evangelicals, I was raised thinking that Catholic practices are probably questionable and maybe
Yeah.
Catholics aren't Christians. It's not news to many of us listening, I'm sure. So I just hadn't really understood that there was such a depth of thinking about how to meet God in different ways.
Mm,
And so I began to, go to direction. We did kind of things that I mean, I'm an Enneagram 4. I have a lot of feeling. Like if you're a person that has a lot of imagination, you're
yeah.
probably anxious, but the flip side of that means that you probably have some creativity or a way you can like in prayer visualize things. So meeting with Debbie, we did all kinds of cool stuff. Like we would do this room of the heart prayer, which again, Joshua, as like a Gen Xer cynical person, that sounded very like suspicious to me. But
Yeah.
it was such a beautiful experience where she would say, where visualize where God might be meeting you.
Mm,
What does that room look like? What are you saying to Jesus in that room? It was very impactful. So I had been kind of curious about going a little bit deeper for years. Around 2018, some folks from Grace started a spiritual direction kind of house called Soul Care Seattle, where people can come for half day retreats
mm,
and or direction. Every year, they lead a circle of folks in the Ignatian exercises. I knew about this, avoided it for years because I knew it was kind of a big deal, a big commitment.
yeah.
The exercises, there's it's considered a retreat, and so historically people would go away for 30 days to some kind of monastic setting and experience this really intense series of prayers and contemplations. And I, of course, as a person living in America with a job and kids, that's not
Mm,
possible for most of us.
yeah.
So they have a modified version at Soul Care. So I went through a 9-month version of the retreats called the
Mm,
19th Annotation, where I would pray for an hour or so a morning for 9 months and then meet with my director once a week. So I avoided
mm,
it because I thought, what if I'm not going to be able to do it well? Or what if I'm not
yeah.
perfect about it? I mean, the truth is, it was remarkably powerful and cool. And sometimes it was half an hour. And that's real life, you know?
Yeah. So why do you think so just take me through some of these exercises that you think were helpful for you to walk you
Yeah.
through that. What are they?
Yeah. I mean, there's 4 different kind of chapters. You kind of go through so many interesting exercises. The first is really around creation, and you consider your own life and your own family. There's the whole hell unit, which sounds pretty freaky, where you just really think about the idea of desolations and
Mm,
what life might be like without God. You kind of move through the story. The exercises ended around Easter, around the resurrection. So it moves towards this kind of triumphant end. And so during that time, there's a lot of time for journaling, there's a lot of time for prayer. There's a whole kind of pattern that you follow for listening prayer, which starts by silence, by sensing
mm,
God's love. Maybe you contemplate a verse. There's various other readings, Ignatius introduces that you spend time with. There's, let's see, I'm trying to think of a couple of examples. There's this exercise about the kind of gross or unguarded soul that was really
mhm,
interesting, and I'm trying to remember how to say it well. It's the idea that the soul is prone to sin, but Ignatius argues that scruples or people that are trying to kind
mm,
of maintain some sort of purity or sort of resist sin may actually be more prone to it. Like this idea of the delicate soul is where the enemy of the soul, as he says, may
mm,
strike. So there's
mm.
interesting kind of contemplations around this idea of desolation and consolation, God
Yeah.
being close or not. And then even if you feel like you're in a sense of a season of consolation where God's close, being on guard for sort of the delicate
Mm,
soul, as Ignatius says, to be struck. So there's a lot of interesting um, experiences around language and sort of an older way of saying things, an older kind of nomenclature. What is the word? An older way of putting things. Let me just cut that out. So,
common
so
culture.
nomenclature.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the goal, of course, is just that the soul would find moderation, not too delicate or
Mm,
gross in that example. So it was a lot of really getting myself familiar with a different kind of language, a different way of
yeah.
thinking about the soul and understanding it. So that's just a little bit.
So where do you think that the church has felt anxiety? Where does anxiety seep in to the church? I mean, I see fear-driven things through evangelicalism pretty
Yeah.
easily. Like it's all about and fear.
Yeah,
And fear drives
totally.
most things. But what have you seen as anxiety, like church anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, I think about how at the congregational or denominational level, that splintering that is happening, is continuing to happen. I mean, again, even now with an Anglicanism this week, lots of headlines. It's just sort of nonstop.
Yeah.
There these things are so often, I think, anxiety responses, how we feel about them. And I think about various hot button issues. I think about I don't know, gender and sexuality, about COVID and masks, whatever kind
Yeah.
of the cultural issue is of the day. There's just a clear kind of river of anxiety under all of that that I think
Yeah.
silos us and prevents us from kind of reaching across different. And so, I don't know. I think there's also just a lot more cynicism and distrust, and I get it. If I was a person that hadn't found myself in a congregation I've experienced to be healthy, and I see this with so many friends, I would have so much sort of like cynicism, distrust, tiptoeing into a church if I was
Mm,
trying to
yeah.
consider what that might be like, or if I would look at the headlines and if I would see how the language of nationalism has just kind of melted into the language of evangelicalism, I would think, I don't want much to do with that. I don't understand. It feels like
Yeah.
power and a lot of isms are being propped up as opposed to service of people that are the most in need of it. So I think there's just a lot of rightful cynicism. And so I think that we've just like doubled down on this need to declare ideological
Mm,
conformity and believing the same things. And it's really caused a lot of anxiety. So I think that then if you're not going to church, it's just easier to stay home if you see how the media portrays it at least. But I have found it to be true that there are wonderful exceptions, and that gives me at least a little bit of hope.
There's
There's at
always
least a few.
exceptions.
There's
There's
always a
always
couple, like they don't
exceptions,
make the headlines. It's not
and they
like
don't make the headlines.
yeah, it's not like church volunteers at community garden with immigrants and refugees. It's like nope,
Yeah.
not a clickbaity one.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with my wife. I mean, we were talking about all the mess within, church leadership and all of this. And I said there are really good churches and there are really good people and there are people that are faithfully following the way of Jesus. And it gives me hope, but it does seem like there is something within the system that produces a lot of this anxiety. Even if they're trying to be
Yeah.
faithful, they move towards a faithfulness towards anxiety and not a faithfulness towards Jesus, just because
Mhm.
it's in the system. It's part of
Mhm.
what they were raised in. And go, oh, that's
That's right.
faithful to
That's
it.
right.
How do we
Yeah.
recognize some of that?
I think that the way of Jesus is so there's this way in which I think we're set to be uncomfortable in the right way. There's a way in which
Mm,
I can
yeah.
discern within me that I am being called to something uncomfortable, but I know that there's a goodness there, that the way of Jesus requires that. And that to me is just a pretty natural filter.
Mm,
If I go to a church for a little while, if I visit a church, it doesn't take long to sort of sense who's that. Like, I still believe that it is possible that the church is one of the bright spots in our country where we can meet across difference. And this is the thing. I mean, in the last few years since I wrote Orphan Believers, I feel like if I say something online where I'm saying Jesus says love everybody, it means that I must hate people. Or it's just there is so little
yeah.
room for nuance. There is so little room. But if I say something that I think is a basic true Christian tenet, that is uncomfortable. And I think that means there's something good there. So I
Mm,
think I'm trying to move
yeah.
towards basic, true, good things, kind of like whole foods or vitamins, things that we know to be true and good.
Mm,
And if I can see that there is a pull towards that, but culturally there's some kind of confusion, I know there's usually something really, really good there, you know? It was kind of
well,
floaty, but that's the best I can verbalize
Well,
it right now.
it is a little floaty, and for some people raised in evangelical churches and have said you can't trust your feelings. You
Yeah.
can't trust what you actually feel. Like you can't be embodied like this
Yep.
anxiety. Like so, how can we trust our emotions? Like,
I know.
is there like can we?
Yeah, I think that I think a lot of people when they are anxious think that we lead with our head, and so
Yeah.
if our body's feeling something, it's not to be trusted. And of course that gets into, you know, some Gnosticism stuff. There's also the idea of, purity culture, and we're told that we need to kind of resist desire or resist things that are
Mm, yeah.
fulfilling or carnal. There's a carnality that's sometimes
Right.
brought up when we think about the body. And so
Mm,
I think that, however, Jesus was embodied, we are embodied creatures. Our spirit and soul and body are very much entwined. And I think there's a really healthy way to pay attention to those things.
mm,
I think that that's usually right. I think that something else that's been important to me is discernment and being able to take time. For example, in the exercises, if I felt like, oh, maybe God said something, I just
yeah.
hold it lightly and loosely and I pray about it. I might talk to trusted friends about it. I think it's the same way with the body. If my body is sensing something is wrong here, or this does feel like a thing where Jesus is moving, I take time and I step back and I say, God, I'm sensing this. Is this really what I
Mm,
feel like you're trying to say? Like, I just think that that's where wisdom and maturity as Christians and bringing in other people to pray with us, discern with us, walk with us is a way to kind of test what
mm.
we may be feeling, to make sure that we acknowledge feelings, but then give them time to kind of either set or to kind of dissipate, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, let's like move into that a little bit. And, for some, we have mental health issues where we need some help and help in others. And so sometimes we have to move in a different direction. Sometimes what's happening in the body is something that needs to be dealt with. And sometimes doctors are like, dismissive of what you feel in the body
Yeah.
and think that
Yeah.
it's something else. And I don't know, like, how do we distinguish and help people, with mental health stuff, and then trusting our bodies and knowing what is
Yeah.
going on?
I mean, one way I can answer that is as a parent, because
Yeah.
I have an anxious kid. I
Hmm.
write about that a little bit. That was interesting to think about how to do well. I try to write about my experience parenting a kid that's anxious.
Yeah.
But my son in 6th grade was diagnosed with OCD, specifically moral OCD, sort of scrupulosity. People might think of OCD as being more like light fixtures going on and off, or people
Hmm.
washing their hands a lot. But for some kids, or for some people, it's more about ruminations and interior thoughts. And
Mm.
so the first thing that we did was like take him seriously and believe him. This applies to your question because it applies to
Yeah.
friends and it applies to how we think about ourselves.
Yeah.
We also were gentle with ourselves, trying to understand how to love him well, and we were gentle with him. But we felt a sense of chaos, confusion, and like we were out of control of our life in a little while. For a little while there was just, I remember one day where I just like, we had gotten him to school and we knew something was really wrong. He was really not himself. And I just went in the kitchen, Joshua. I just like sat on the floor and I just thought, something is wrong and I need help. I called my friend. I said, I don't know what to do. Please, she had a kid with something similar going on. She was really encouraging, but quickly it became clear that we needed to seek some kind of more support. And so we did. We found a therapist that has been amazing. And we
Hmm.
began to have language to understand. Because the other thing I would say is that it is so easy to feel like you're the only one, or that, especially with certain anxiety disorders or OCD, or some thoughts just seem so wild or like so like singular that clearly no, but I feel like it's easy to kind of be singled out or feel like we're on our own. And so being able to then have language to explain to our kid and explain to ourselves, oh, this is what's going on, and there are many people who experience this, was like a whole like paradigm shift.
Yeah.
At that point, we really were able to see a way forward. So I think
Mm.
that taking it seriously, being kind, and also trying to understand that I don't know that I've come across a person that has not had some kind of something going on where there has not been a community around them if they've looked a little bit for them, experiencing
Mm.
something similar.
I mean, it's almost counterintuitive in our culture of saying we have to. That's part of the control. Like, what I need to do here is I need to control the outcome. I need
Yeah.
to do the right thing, and it's all on me. It's on my shoulders. Part of what Jesus was talking about in "Do Not Worry," I believe, is that he's talking to a communal culture, which a
Yeah.
community. He's talking to a community, not just
Yeah.
individuals.
Totally.
And how do we see, like, shed some of that individualism and control, like it's all on me, and there is community. You said there is community if we look for it. It's
Yeah.
right there. It's right around us.
And that is in health what the church could be or should be, and
Yeah.
sometimes I think is. That to do that, to move towards community means a couple of things. It means a lot of shame can come up, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of we are really good at managing image, and that can be like a pretty crushing, scary
Yeah.
thing, because that is really at its root. Talking about it with people is about acceptance, or will I be seen differently? Will my kid or my family be seen differently? Will I be judged? So the vulnerability of that is a big deal, but I'm convinced that that is a way forward. The other thing, the second thing, is that it could be the news could be held in hands of a bad actor, or of someone that doesn't know what to do,
Mm.
or of somebody with a lot of assumptions about whatever the situation is. I mean, look, growing up in evangelicalism, a lot of us were told that therapy, for example, if we're just still talking about that for a minute, is
Yeah.
not for us. Or like maybe if something's really, really bad, we can go. Maybe you go to a Christian counselor, but like,
Right.
even till today, like my dad, we just a couple weeks ago had a big discussion about this, and he said, I mean, he needs people. He has chosen a life where he has not sought kind of help for his own anxiety, where he has friends, but not really like that. And so now as his
Mm.
kid, I'm kind of receiving or hearing a lot of those messages and telling him, like, you need to be able to talk to someone else about these things. And so I think that if early in life we have the support systems around us that we can build up, it really is a deposit into kind of our future. And if we think about being parents, how we may or may not
Mm.
rely on our kids. And it feels like a really difficult thing to do. And I guess this is the other thing. If I've ever reached out towards community and known that if it is true that if the church carries each other, if there are seasons of doubt, we carry each other.
Mm.
If, like the communion line, there are saints before and after us, and we're a part of this family of faith, like if
Yeah.
Jesus is actually working within communities, then I may feel embarrassed. I may feel shame. I may, I may feel like I did not find the right person that can hold this, but eventually, like
Yeah.
where the trajectory is towards community and health and healing, and that we're all
Mm.
collectively holding each other in these seasons.
Yeah. I mean, that's the choice that we have as a collective, as a whole. If I'm thinking about my country at the moment, I have a choice of holding our anxieties together and doubling down on our fear and mistrust of each other.
Yeah,
Or I can hold a space where we are in this together and we can move towards each other. Like
that's
those
right.
are two things I could hold, and I get to choose what I hold. And we all, as people in this crazy country right now, get to choose
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the idea of the slippery slope as you're saying this, the idea
Mhm.
that if our hands are open, if we do move towards each other across difference, that means that we have to hold difference of opinions.
Yeah.
We have to talk about these issues where, oh, if she believes women should be in leadership or preaches, that must mean she's a step away from losing her faith or from not being orthodox. It is we just want to divide each other because we want to feel safe and like we're
Hmm.
okay. So the idea of moving from a posture like that towards one of wells not fences, this idea that the church can be a place where we're not trying to lock people in to kind of keep them fenced in because we're scared that they might get out and fall off a cliff. But the idea that instead of the anxiety response, that Jesus draws us to this well of life and goodness, that there's something there and we can relax, I think is really difficult, especially for a lot of us that were raised in evangelical church like I was. But I think that we want to shepherd people to Jesus rather than worrying about keeping them within a boundary. I think
Yeah.
if Jesus is true and good, then there's a real rest that can come there. And that's something
Mm.
that I've been trying to practice in my own life in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I think one of the ways that you said you could practice this and to hold things open is holy indifference. And can you explain it for people? Because indifference to me feels like I'm just checking out.
Yeah,
And it
totally.
can feel like I'm checking out. So, what is holy indifference, and how is that helpful for
Yeah.
us?
Yeah. I mean, so I think of the hymn, It Is Well With My Soul.
Mm.
I think of Jesus saying, Your will be done, and the Lord's Prayer in the garden is a perfect example of indifference. Or I love St. Teresa of Lisieux's morning offering, where she says, to accept the joys and sorrows of this passing life. It's this idea that I think that people confuse indifference with checking out because they don't understand. I think that it is this essential tool towards us doing the work of
Yeah.
justice, of service. The idea of coming to it's coming to the posture, the ability of saying, God, do what you want to do, whatever that means, even if the outcome feels difficult or hard, is
Mm.
something that's really difficult. But I do think that Jesus knew he would be crucified. Like he knew that he was being crucified in an empire. He knew that many people would be martyred or would feel lost, but he still said, Do not worry. He still said, Father, your will be done. And that is indifference. And to me, that is the perfect companion towards work that I think we're called to do towards service and care for the least of these. So to me, it feels like
Mm.
personal work that we can do to then strengthen us to do outward work.
Well, let's move towards a practical example to figure out what holy indifference looks like.
Sure.
In caregiving, I'll just give you an example
Yeah.
from my life. My mother-in-law lived with us up until she passed away about a year and a half ago,
Okay.
and at the end, as she was, she's not eating, she's losing weight, she's doing these things. What happens, especially with
Yeah.
my wife, is the primary caregiver there to her mother is, hey, my wife is scared that she's going to lose her mom and
Yeah.
she wants to hold on. Right. So she wants to hold on and
Yeah.
she wants to control this situation because we don't want to lose her. Like we
Yeah.
want her around. And we see that something can actually help in
Yeah.
situations where really, like, the only thing you could do is be with and be
Mm.
present and we could let go. Is holy indifference, how is that possible? Because
It's
this is the most personal, hardest
Yeah,
thing
it's so hard.
that happens.
Gosh, I mean, I talk about this in the book, but I understand some of those dynamics so much personally in this
Yeah.
own season in my life. I mean, if holy indifference is essentially this spiritual posture of letting go, of saying that I can be open and receive whatever you do, God, whatever the outcome is, then there are these actual real life difficult situations like you just described, where you love a person so much that you don't want to let them go.
Yeah.
But sometimes you sense that it's more about you or what you need. I think about situations where maybe a loved one is towards the end of life, and my dad right now is very much in the end stages of advanced cancer. And I think about how there's often a family member that might say, you've got to keep fighting, or like using language
Yeah.
like don't let go. But really that's often more about the person than it is about the actual patient than the loved
Yeah.
one. And so I think that indifference frees us to kind of notice our own need to hold on, and then
Mm.
lets us focus more on what the person we love really needs. And so
Yeah.
my dad right now, just a couple weeks ago, he's been through maybe 8 different treatments for multiple myeloma, a blood cancer that's not
Mhm.
curable. His numbers kind of come down when he's in an immunotherapy, and then they go up again when it stops working. So he's at the point now where, I mean, 8 or 9 treatments in, his body's just kind of done. And so he has
Yeah.
to decide. I mean, Joshua, we have like an oncologist
Mm.
appointment next week where I think we're going to have the conversation, because the palliative care piece has kind of been coming up. But I think that we're going to
Yeah.
have the conversation where they'll say, Tom, we can keep trying, but your body is shutting down and you need to make a decision about what to do. And like
Mm.
the idea of being at that point with this person that you love, like this person that you've been with and that has raised you, and then you're in this position of caring for them. And then they
Mm.
say to you, and my dad has said this other times, what do you think I should do? It's like, I just want to love you through whatever you want to do, Dad. Like indifference lets
Yeah.
me do that instead of telling him what my own self would say, which is, please don't
Mm.
leave. I don't want to let you go. I love you.
Yeah.
I can't. It frees me to focus on him and what he needs and how to have him have the best final months of his life.
Yeah.
Ugh,
I mean,
gosh, but it's so
that's
hard. It's so hard.
it is so hard. And it's hard on the patient. I mean, it was like, I know my mother-in-law wanted to hold on as much as possible. She didn't want to let go until
Yeah.
she finally said to my wife, "I'm ready.
Yeah.
I think I'm ready." And, that was a few days before she went. And that was
Gosh.
not like, it was the holding on. And it was a few days earlier. Like I could tell, like she was holding on to something. And I felt like I was here. I could picture as she's laying in the bed. And I said, Mitzi, I will take care of Meredith. I will take care of your
Yeah.
grandson. I'll take
It's
care
so
of Luke.
freeing.
Like
Oh gosh.
you don't have to worry anymore. I will take care of it. It's not on you. I will do it.
I mean,
And
you just said that.
that
I
was a
just had a
gift.
bodily reaction to you. I just felt like myself relax hearing you say that about your mother-in-law. My gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
And
profound gift.
it felt like that was a shift and that was a change. It was like, okay, there's something I could actually let go. I could
Yeah.
release.
That's so
And
good. Yeah.
we're talking about very precious moments in family, but this is what I mean, if we just go into our everyday lives and the
Yeah.
way we do it is, how do we give permission to people to be able to see holy indifference in their life and to be
Yeah.
able to let go and to say, okay, it's not actually all on me and my
Yeah.
shoulders, because really we're all just like anxiety balls. We're all
Yeah.
scared.
Yeah.
We're all just little kids scared in this world.
It's such a relief. I mean, this is so here's I think it starts by noticing. It comes up all the time. I'd say every day there's another kind of tiny moment for me to practice indifference. But
Yeah.
here's a practical one that is very different than what we were just talking about with end of life and caregiving. So like we're talking right now because I'm bringing this book into the world, and as an author, that's a pretty wild. I mentioned like I'm just kind of, you write something and then you have to talk about it all the time. Authors are typically introverts, but the idea that whatever happens with this book, if it sells like hotcakes, if it doesn't sell any
Mm.
copy, whatever happens, like letting go of the emotion of that, of the pride of it, just believing that the process of writing it was meaningful and worthwhile, and the outcome of how it performs is not attached to like
Yeah.
the worth of the book, and that God can do what he wants to do with this book has been, I mean, that is just to be honest, the weird part is that writing this book and then talking about indifference and then trying to bring it into the world, there've been many times where that's felt really challenging to me.
Yeah.
So I'm practically thinking about it in kind of a meta way right now. It's kind of a funny twist. But I had a talk with Drew, my husband, last night about this very thing. And I said, I just have to let it be. I have to let it
Mm,
go. And I can sense that I'm trying to like hold on for control. Maybe if I pitch another op-ed, or maybe if I ask somebody for, like, it's just a lot of striving and
yeah.
a lot of anxiety, when really there's this call to just let it be. And then I can sense a certain rest. So then I kind of turn
Yeah.
towards that posture. So that's been like a daily practical thing lately.
Yeah, well done. And keep it up, keep going, because this is God's asking you to be in it. One name that comes up a few times in your book that you got a lot out of is Nick Cave, and
Yeah, gosh.
finding joy in suffering,
Mm,
and in that. What did you learn through this process there from Nick Cave?
yeah,
And why is he a
gosh.
voice that we can learn from?
Man, so he has this sort of, it's not a Substack. He has something called the Red Hand Files. I think many listeners would have come across it. It's just a series of folks that write in questions that he'll answer. And I'm a Gen Xer. I kind of knew about his band, The Birthday Party, for a long time when I was growing up, and I knew that he sang that song on the Harry Potter soundtrack where Harry and Hermione dance at the end about the kids on the train. Like I just had sort of known a little bit about him. But when I learned a little bit more about his life, how he's lost two sons, has had immense, incredible grief in the worst way. You think about losing a parent, which is incredibly painful, but there is in this way a natural order. You imagine
Yeah.
that in many cases your parent will pass. But the fact that on two occasions Nick Cave has lost a child, the way that he writes about that, his creative expression. I mean, as a person that appreciates aesthetics and beauty and noticing, the
Yeah.
way that he expresses that, and the way that he talks about how it is precisely that joy and suffering are opposite sides of the same coin, and
Mm,
that to fully experience life, we have to understand something about suffering. He talks about it with a fearlessness that I think is incredibly inspiring. And
yeah.
also the way that he talks about, there was a Krista Tippett interview that I write about in the book that was just very profound, where he talks about experiencing God in a cathedral and holiness. He talks about,
Mm,
prophetically talks about faith in the church in a way that I think a lot of us could learn from, even though I don't know that he would call himself a Christian. So I've just been he feels like a prophetic voice right now in a very
mm.
unexpected way. Are you a fan, by the way?
I am a fan of Nick Cave. Yes, big fan of Nick Cave. I think it's important to actually find some prophetic voices in the midst of our our world now that actually can point us to a place of hope and say
Yeah.
there is joy in suffering. Like we could find the joy that even though our world is full of suffering, we need to find those prophetic voices.
Yeah.
But I want to know here now, as we get closer to the end, is where we started at the beginning, is that you still hold anxiety in your
Yeah.
body. Our
Yeah.
systems hold anxiety. Our political systems hold
Yeah.
anxiety. What
Yeah.
is going to help us, and what helps you, knowing that, hey, there's
Yeah.
presence with us,
Yep.
but
That's right.
what helps us at the end?
A couple of things come to mind. The first, and this isn't something that I write about explicitly, but something that I have thought about in the months since writing the book, is how the the idea, looking at politics in the church, that things may continue to fall apart, like there comes a point where you sort of, control doesn't feel like that great. If anxiety is typically a response to want to be in control and to not be
Yeah.
uncertain, like there's this way in which certainty becomes less plausible and less possible, and maybe even not the point. And I think that that is something I'm trying to understand more. But I think that if my posture is set on wanting to feel okay and not feel a sense of fear because the world feels very difficult right now. And I'm, obviously a middle-aged white lady in Seattle. Like, what do I mean? I am not a person that is typically like really on the front line. I'm not an ice age and is not knocking at my door. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm saying this as a person
Yeah.
that has relative safety. I cannot imagine, but I just do have to wonder if if our postures can be less on why we need to be certain and more about the great, longer, bigger story of Jesus, the goodness and reconciliation in the end that is to come. I mean, if I'm going to believe this wild story, if I'm going to
Mm,
believe that it's all true, I have to believe that it's moving towards redemption, and at the end all the sad things will be untrue and all things will be
mm,
made well. And so even if that's not something that I can see or experience in my lifetime, even then it's not about me. It's about the story of the church and the story that Jesus is doing to redeem the world. And so there is like a quiet comfort in that.
yeah.
How we apply that theoretical to like our daily anxiety or the daily headlines. I mean, today as we're talking, the peace in the Middle East seems less likely. There's been another conflict,
Yeah.
right? Or, something silly. The Mariners lost the sixth game and they're probably going to be out tonight,
I
but we're
know.
still
Yeah.
hoping. Yeah,
I'm so
whatever.
hoping.
How
Uh,
that applies daily
that's
is
where
different.
my anxiety happens right now, is the Mariners have given me lots of anxiety.
When people listen, they'll know the outcome. Who knows? But
I know.
how that translates daily to me has to come back to noticing the thought, and at that moment being able to tell myself, God, I'm going to almost do this exposure, like I'm not in control, and I that's okay.
Mm,
Like, do what you want to do with the book. Do what you want to do with this next appointment for my dad. Like, I
yeah.
believe you're good and that you're here and present, and that's the best I can do. And that is profoundly different than how I was thinking a few years ago.
Well, what you just said here is that you notice a thought. I think when we can notice thoughts, we can notice our emotions, we can notice things. It feels like they're actually on the outside of us, that
Yeah.
we could let them pass
Yeah.
and be okay there.
They become
That is
smaller.
a oh my gosh, that is such a huge gift to people, to actually realizing that your emotions
Yeah,
are an emotion
that's right.
that you could see and let pass, and they don't define you. They're
That's
not
right.
all of who you are, but it feels like it sometimes, right? So that is huge. How did you get to a place where you could notice that and let him pass?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a person that has a lot of like my mind body connections pretty strong. And
Yeah.
so, I talk about in the book about health anxiety, which is kind of like my dad's flavor of anxiety that I feel like was
Yeah.
passed, but the baton was passed to me. And so if if somebody has a headache, my head usually starts to hurt. I mean, I can really just sort of like
Mm,
a sponge take that on. And so I began to think about, and in therapy talked about how my mind has these kind of well dug trenches.
yeah.
So the second a sensation may come in the body, like the mind just kind of shoots down like a river down this. This
Yeah.
is what's wrong, and then the anxiety, the adrenaline comes. But I've just learned to kind of in my mind, take a beat, like literally 1 second. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes the adrenaline comes and rushes before, but I can
Mm,
more than ever take a minute and say, "Hey, I think that you're reacting to this because of anxiety or because of fear." Just like you
mm,
don't have to go down that well-worn sort of stream of worry. Like just like
yeah.
stand by the bank for a minute just to keep going with this river
Yeah.
exercise. Notice a couple of leaves, let the thought go like down the river, not to be too floaty,
Mm,
but really like it's been very, very helpful. And so slowly this like river becomes more of a stream and then it kind of dries up and it's just long, slow work. And so I
mm.
think at this point, it's more like a bubbling brook and less like a raging river, but it's certainly not. This is too much. We're going too far. But
That's good. Well, Sarah, if you could talk to your readers, what hope do you have for nervous systems?
yeah, I hope that even if a reader, I know we're all anxious about certain things in our life, but not all of us would talk about leading with anxiety. But I
Yeah.
would hope that even if people are not in a season of anxiety, that anybody can see the anxiety in someone they love or just in the system right now. We're all swimming in the same waters. And I would hope that
Yeah.
people could begin to think about practices like non anxious presence. I talk about
Mhm.
Benedictine vows of fidelity and stability. I hope that we could look together at some of these more ancient practices that feel very relevant for today and begin to kind of build a toolbox that we might be able to reference back to in seasons of our life when we need them as caregivers or as our own bodies change in age or as the world continues to do what it'll do.
All right. Sarah, do you have anything you've been reading or watching lately you could recommend?
Yeah. Oh gosh, what a fun question. I've been reading. so many things that I can't think about them right now because it's like when you go into a CD store or like an album, you're like, what are you listening to? But I can tell you something that I'm watching and something that I'm listening to because
All
there's
right.
like 18 books. So I am so excited about the next season of Slow Horses because Gary Oldman is like the best ever and we
Yep.
think he's the most amazing actor. So the first two seasons are out and I think the third came out this week, which means I have to subscribe to whatever
Season
it's
5.
on. 5, right. I've seen them all.
It's season
Okay.
5.
Is it out? So I need to
It's out.
resubscribe to is it Apple TV?
It's Apple.
So
Yeah.
what I do is, like many of us, subscribe because it's out and then I stop. So I'm
Good
so
job.
excited. I don't it's like Gary Oldman, like just like the wink of an eye or the turn of a head, just like the littlest thing. I think he's the best actor of our time. I'm obsessed. So I love that
Uh,
show. And then the other what I'm listening to, there's a singer called Molly Pardon who is on
mm,
Porter's Gate and has done a lot of really cool kind of modern hymns, but she has a new EP called Polaris that I'm basically only playing on repeat constantly every day. That's how I get pretty stuck on
Excellent.
stuff, but it's kind of ethereal. So I'd totally recommend this Molly Parton EP.
Mm, that's wonderful. Thank you. Nervous Systems out everywhere, November 4th. Wherever you get your books, you can go get your books. Is there anywhere you'd like to point people to get the book specifically? And how could they connect with you?
Yeah. There's my friends Sean and Miley have a little bookstore in Lancaster, PA called Nooks. They're doing a special partnership for the book where you order it, they give you 20% off, and you support a wonderful local bookstore. So just go to Nooks and email them, and they'll set you up. Other than that, wherever you like to get books, and then I'm on Substack at Bitter Scroll, Instagram, Sara Billups.
Perfect. Well, Sarah, thank you for this conversation. Thanks for going deep into our anxieties, both personal and corporate and family anxieties, and knowing that, hey, Jesus could be present with us in the midst of them. And thank you for walking us through some practices, and especially the practice of holy indifference, of keeping our hands open to whatever God has for us
Mhm.
in this moment, that He can do it. And hey, we are not in control of everything, and that we could let go of our control and our control issues. And so,
Yeah.
thank you, Sarah. It was a
Amen.
fantastic
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you for making it so easy. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I just hope I read another book so I can do this again someday.
Well, you don't
Thank
have
you.
to write another book. You can just come on anytime you
Okay,
want to.
cool. That sounds better.
All
Thank
right.
you.